Welcome, everybody. Salam alaikum. My name is Adam Semensky, and I'm the president of CAPSARC, an energy and environmental think tank in Riyadh. Thank you for joining today's virtual seminar on achieving a circular carbon economy through multilateral collaboration. This event is jointly sponsored by the Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, and the G20 Energy Sustainability Working Group, the ESWG, which is under the Saudi Arabia G20 presidency, the host of this year's G20 summit. Many experts agree that the challenge of achieving the climate goals set forth in the Paris Agreement is best met by encouraging all options to manage greenhouse gas emissions. One of the organizing principles of what we call the circular economy is the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle. The circular carbon economy embraces each of these principles and adds a 4th to it, remove. These 4 R's form the basis for carbon management in the circular carbon economy. The CCE is an integrated and inclusive approach to a more comprehensive, resilient, and climate-friendly energy system that supports and enables sustainable development. Multilateral collaboration and cooperation will be essential in developing the technologies associated with managing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions. It'll be critical to find practical solutions that foster economic well-being and enable improvements in the quality of life for everybody. A quick word on today's agenda. We will start with remarks by the chair of the G20 Energy Sustainability Working Group. Then we'll hear a presentation on the status of the Circular Carbon Economy Guide being coordinated by CAPSARC. There will be presentations by 3 of the international organizations who are contributing to the guide, and this will be followed by remarks on how the CCE principles are being applied in Saudi Arabia. We'll then examine how multilateral collaboration can accelerate technological development and deployment of CCE solutions, and we'll finish with a moderated question and answer session. Please note that all of the questions received in the chat box will be saved, and the sponsors will be getting back to everyone by email, and this session is being recorded. Now, let me turn to our first speaker. The first speaker is Fareed Asaleh. He has served as Saudi Arabia's lead on energy issues for the G20 for the last decade. Currently, he's the chairman of the G20 ESWG under the Saudi presidency. He's a senior advisor to His Royal Highness, the Saudi Minister of Energy. Fareed, over to you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and I would like to thank CEM and Mission Innovation for providing this opportunity. My presentation today will consist of 4 pillars. I will focus on in general the circular carbon economy. Then I'll move on to the circular carbon economy platform and its components. And thirdly, I'll look at the applications of the CCE, and I will conclude with some remarks. In general terms, this schematic just shows you that there are 2 models here. One is, if you look at the left side, one is only a linear carbon economy where all emissions are emitted to the atmosphere. However, the circular carbon economy looks at the 4 strategies that of the reduce. No matter how much you do on reduce, you need to also look at the other components: reuse, recycle, and remove. This is just to show you that this can provide a way forward as we go along. With that, let me just take you one step back. The circular carbon economy is based on the circular economy. If we look at the waste management model back in the 70s, and then this had evolved into the circular economy in the 90s, this addresses the waste management materials in general terms. So what does Saudi Arabia bring into new? So it adds the 4th component, which is the remove, and this completes the circle in order to really address the emissions as we go along. And in addition to that, what this platform or what this concept is about is actually addresses the emissions as opposed only to materials. It also employs, in general terms, the technologies under each one of those R's, noting that this could be an overlaps between them. So if I may start with the reduced component, the reduced component will focus on the notably renewable technologies, energy efficiency, nuclear power here, and this is a major component. However, that needs to be done even more, as a matter of fact. So if we really take and circulate the emissions, then you are really going into the technology of the carbon capture and utilization, and then you turn those emissions into valuable products, which is called the emissions to value. But then also you need to add to that the recycling. Then no matter how much you do, then you need to really look at additional technologies. Bioenergy comes into play. Hydrogen, while it's listed here, it can go even across all technologies. Last but not least, you still need to address the remaining emissions as you go along in order to really provide cleaner energy systems in the future. And therefore, you need to look at additional technologies, which is the CCS and the direct air capture in the energy sphere in general terms. So this is what the circular carbon economy under the energy umbrella that I can bring about. Having said that, let me just move on to the platform that has been put forward by the presidency. The circular carbon economy platform consists of three things: approach, opportunities, and acceleration. So in that context, the CCE is, in general terms, a holistic, integrated, and inclusive approach based on, of course, its four strategies that will contribute to sustainable development and economic growth, which values all sources, all sectors, and all options. So you look at the center here and tells you what are the 4 R's, the different 4 R's that can advance the approach. Now, having said that, look at the different technologies under the energy sphere. You need to look at what components that I have mentioned already in one of the previous slides here. But I'll touch on the application later on. This is not only confined to energy; it goes beyond. It actually looks at even other sectors, and this is very essential component whereby you look at how would you transform emissions to feedstock, material recovery, for example. In the recycling, you look at how would you maximize emissions circularity in products, food, livestock. As well as, of course, there's a removal part that relates in general to natural-based solutions, and there are technologies such as onboard carbon capture and mobility. So with that, these congregations will contribute to the environmental component in order to manage emissions from all sectors. In addition to that, you look at the social components, and then how would that contribute to basically reduce the poverty eradication as we go along and increase jobs. Thirdly, we look at the economic side of it, which advances economic growth and sustainable recovery. And last but not least, of course, the focus is on technology. How would we really utilize technology innovations in order to move forward? With that, now we move to the opportunities. There are a number of opportunities that are in existence. So basically, once you have those 4 R's, so you need to identify the business opportunities in order to move forward. Those opportunities basically can be clusters in 4 different parts, like technology and innovation, which is important. In addition to that, you have the partnership that can be really moving those opportunities. And then you need to look at system efficiency, practices and processes in the different sectors. But last but not least, you have the policy implementation that countries can really look at. So this is just to look at the high level opportunities. But in order to move that, so you need to have to accelerate these different opportunities in order to create a framing and potential vehicles to action such opportunities. And here you can do them at the national level, whereby you integrate the CCE into your strategies, plans, the NDCs. You also need to scale up and go a little bit higher into the regional and international levels by clustering and partnerships, creating programs and hubs and perhaps championships. But equally important that you need to look at enabling environmental mechanisms, whereby you look at different business models. You need to focus on finance and investment, of course, and infrastructure. So this is how would you advance the opportunities. With that, where this CCE can be applied.
Can you conclude, Fareed, please? Thank you.
I'm going fast. Okay. Here you have the different aspects. On energy, you have about 41%, but we need to also address the 59% of emissions as we go along. These are the applications: energy, mobility, building, industry, agriculture, livestock. And last but not least, if I may just share with you my thoughts here, I'm almost concluding. The CCE approach contributes to sustainable development that includes climate. It builds on circular economy. It advances technology and innovation, transforms emissions challenge to business opportunities. It also values all options and technologies, covers all economic sectors, promotes integrated business models. It looks at provide collaborative platform, accounts for local and national context, and contributes to economic growth with that. If you look at here, the synergy of circular carbon economy is actually looking at the energy and the climate components, but importantly, it actually provides for economic growth. And I conclude here, Adam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fareed. That was fantastic. And we will be making these materials available, and this will be recorded so people can study those slides. Very thorough. Our next speaker is Eric Williams. Eric is a senior economist at CAPSARC. He has over 20 years of experience in program management, climate and energy policy, energy systems modeling, and lots of work on renewable and low carbon energy technologies. Eric is also the coordinator of the Circular Carbon Economy Guide. Eric, please go ahead. Eric, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Adam. I'd like to discuss today the Guide to the Circular Carbon Economy. CAPSARC has been working with leading international organizations to write a series of reports on the circular carbon economy, and this series collectively we're calling the CCE Guide. The guide will be launched September 24th, along with a dedicated website, www.cceguide.org, and I invite everyone to visit that on the 24th. So as Fareed and Adam have mentioned, circular carbon economy is really an extension of circular economy. It's based on the fundamental principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle, but circular carbon economy adds a fourth R for remove. Circular economy is really a framework for sustainable production and consumption, whereas circular carbon economy is a framework for climate mitigation that values all options. The circular economy scope is resource and material flows, whereas circular carbon economy scope is energy and carbon flows. And the goal of the circular economy is to minimize resource consumption and waste disposal. The circular carbon economy's goal is to really manage greenhouse gas emissions toward a balance or a net zero. So CAPSARC's vision for circular carbon economy is presented here in this figure. You can see at its core is circular economy, and driving that is energy efficiency and energy supply. And low carbon supply reduces the amount of CO2 that has to be managed, and then that CO2 can be captured and reused or removed to storage, and any remaining CO2 that goes to the atmosphere can be captured through direct air capture and stored, or recycled through the natural carbon cycle into sinks, and then ultimately bioenergy to close that loop. On the cceguide.org website, we're going to have a tool called the CCE Visualizer, and this is a more realistic view of the circular carbon economy, and you can use this to explore a range of long-term climate and energy scenarios that are presented in a circular carbon economy framework. CAPSARC has written an overview to the CCE Guide report series. And in this overview, we go into some detail describing what the circular carbon economy is. And we also have very brief summaries of the other reports in the series. And then we have an analysis section that concludes that that all options are going to be needed to meet the Paris Agreement's climate goals. The guide series is organized around the 4 R's, and the first R, reduce, has 3 dedicated reports to it. The IEA wrote a report on energy efficiency. IRENA has written a report on non-biorenewables, and the Nuclear Energy Agency wrote a report on nuclear. The IEA has also written a report on reuse or carbon reuse or utilization. IRENA as well has written another report on recycle, bioenergy. And the Global CCS Institute has written on remove, focusing on carbon capture and storage. And finally, we have two reports that cut across the 4Rs, and one of those is written again by IEA, and it focuses on hydrogen, which can span all 4 of the Rs. And then OECD has written on enabling policies that again is relevant for each of the Rs individually and collectively. And so with that, I would like to thank you. If you have interest in other CAPSARC research, visit capsarc.org, and please visit the cceguide.org website on September 24th.
Thanks very much, Eric. That was fantastic. We'll now have 3 of the international organizations who are involved in the guide make presentations. First off will be Dave Turk. Dave joined the IEA in September of 2016 and currently is the acting deputy executive director and head of the Strategic Initiatives Office. His career is focused significantly on international clean energy and climate initiatives. Dave, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam. And it's always a pleasure to be with you for any event. So we're in good hands with your able moderation here. Let me start, if I could go to the next slide, with a bit of a snapshot of how we're doing globally. As you'll see on your screen in a minute, if we could go to the next slide, please. As you'll see when we get to the slide. Hi, could we go to the next slide, please?
Did we go too far? Dave, do you want to go backward?
No, this is I'm seeing the first slide. I'm seeing just the cover slide. I want to go to the slide titled Technology and Innovation is on Track. So if
maybe your computer is slow. I could see those on my screen.
All right. Yeah, if we could go to the Technology and Innovation is not on track.
I can see that slide, and it discusses power, industry, transport, and buildings.
Yeah, perfect. There must be a lag in terms of what I'm seeing on my screen in front of me. Apologies to everybody. So this is a bit of a snapshot of how we're doing. And as you see in front of you, you see a variety of technologies and sectors, 46 in total, a number of technologies in power, industry, transport, buildings, fuel supply, energy integration. And what we've done in this exercise, this is our Tracking Clean Energy Progress Report, is grade all of those with a stoplight feature. So those technologies that you see are green, solar PV, for example, is actually doing its share to get us to our very ambitious global climate goals and the Paris Agreement, but also steep reductions in air pollution and achieving our SDGs when it comes to universal electricity access. And what you see here is only 6 technologies. 6 of 46 are actually green. A lot more are yellow. That is making some progress, but not nearly enough. And then a whole lot more red. That's not making much progress at all and far from where we need to get. So this is a bit of a stark reminder. There's a lot more work and a lot of different technologies and areas that we need to really enhance further. Go to the next slide, please. What you see in front of you now is really emphasizing the urgency of now. COVID-19 has had huge impacts, of course, on health, on the global economy around the world. No part of the world has been spared the repercussions. But also the challenges on energy have been immense. What you see here are energy sector GHG emissions graphed over the last 15 years. As we saw in the previous recession, the Great Recession in 2009, we had a dip in emissions. Unfortunately, because we didn't make decisions, governments, others make decisions to structurally change, we saw emissions come roaring back. In fact, that's the biggest increase we've ever seen in human history. What we see now, if you look ahead to 2020, is we see another steep reduction in emissions. quite a bit bigger, actually, multitudes bigger than what we saw in 2009. And what we face now is an urgency of now in terms of the stimulus programs, the recovery programs that governments are implementing around the world. If we don't make structural changes, if we don't do the kinds of deployment, development that we're going to be talking about during the session, we go in the brown area without a sustainable recovery. Emissions come roaring back along those lines. But if we make the structural changes, and we put together at the IEA a sustainable recovery plan, trying to point out different policies and mechanisms that can get us into that green band, into a sustainable recovery, structurally changing our energy and our emissions going forward. Challenging, but it can be done. Next slide, please. With our sustainable recovery plan, we not only point out a number of areas in efficiency, system integration of renewables, a variety of other technologies that can be deployed, not only good for the environment, good for climate, but very powerful for job creation. What you see in front of you is in 2020, we're predicting about 6 million jobs lost because of the COVID-19 crisis. The sustainable recovery plan that we put on the table has 9 million new jobs in 2021, 2022, 2023, and you see the distribution of those jobs. Next slide, please. One of the most powerful things that can be done, and we focus a lot on the IEA, is efficiency, both in the sustainable recovery plan, but also looking longer term. And what you see from efficiency are huge, huge benefits. 32% lower SO2 and other pollutants, $600 billion US in avoided energy expenditures, 550 billion US dollars in avoided household energy spending, a full 40% of the reductions, carbon reductions, coming from just energy efficiency across buildings, across industry, across transport. Next slide, please. Now, we've done an analysis of what you can convert CO2 in the circular carbon economy into fuels, into chemical intermediaries, plastics, CO2 cured concrete, and aggregates from waste. And then we took a look at all of those in terms of scalability. How big of an opportunity space is there? The competitiveness, the energy intensity, and the climate benefits. A few things come out when you look at this, this slide on overview of carbon management potential. One is we really need to look at the net emissions outcomes of CO2. Incredibly important to know what your net emissions are. It's not an easy analysis, but something that we're working on, others are working on as well. And then secondly, a lot of innovation opportunity here. Innovation that's happening in some places in the world, but a lot more needs to be done to take advantage of the opportunities, especially to lower those costs associated with these technologies. Next slide, please. Let me just focus on hydrogen for a second. I know hydrogen's hot. It's getting a lot of attention. I'm sure it'll be getting a lot of focus over the coming days as part of the CEM and MI and G20 discussion right now. This is really just showing the versatility of hydrogen. It can be produced in a number of ways through a number of energy sources, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, for example, and it's versatile in terms of its end uses, especially to decarbonize hard to abate sectors and for storage opportunities as well. We focused a lot on hydrogen for the last G20, the Japanese presidency. We put together our most comprehensive report on hydrogen, and we're only seeing more and more interest as countries put out their strategic plans. Last slide, please. This is looking at the international collaboration space. There's an awful lot going on out there. You see different things that we're doing in our IEA technology collaboration programs, TCPs, what's going on in mission innovation, what's going on in CEM, what has been happening in the G20, and then looking at the Saudi Arabian chairmanship for the G20 with reduce, recycle, cross-cutting, removing, reusing, et cetera. I just put this slide on the table to emphasize for everybody, let's try to co-brand, let's try to co-locate, and even look for some consolidation opportunities. Much better globally if we have a few initiatives or one initiative in each of these areas that's really big, that's really powerful, that has a center of gravity, as opposed to having a scattershot approach where everybody has to go to 10 different meetings. So there's a lot of opportunities to try to bring some rationalization and really try to step up to the plate globally with the kind of concerted focus, the kind of collaboration that's necessary for the diversity of technologies needed to get us to where we need to go. So again, Adam, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having the IEA participate.
Yeah, Dave, it's been a real pleasure, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on this really, really important issue. At the International Renewable Energy Agency, Dolph Gillen has been the director of the Innovation and Technology Center since 2001. Dolph oversees IRENA's work advising member countries on energy transitions, renewable energy, technology roadmaps, energy planning, costs and markets, and innovation frameworks. Innovation will need to play a very, very important role. And Dolph, we're looking forward to your remarks. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. It's a pleasure to join this discussion today. So it's good to see that renewables are indeed recognized as a core component of the circular carbon economy, both the biomass and the recycle part, as well as the other renewables under reduce. Despite, if we move to the next slide, despite the corona crisis, renewables are going strong. We expect this year capacity additions for solar PV and wind that are at the same level as last year. And we see record shares of renewables in power generation this year. And we see also that the field of applications for renewables continues to broaden. So for example, offshore wind is coming up as a key technology. We see much more attention for electrification and green hydrogen in combination with renewable power as solutions. And our
Dolph, on my screen, we're still on your title page. Did you?
That's correct. Yeah. Give me a second. So if we move to the next slide on the renewable power capacity, so we're currently at around 27% renewables in power generation. We think that will increase significantly. Business as usual takes us to 55%, but what we need is really 86% renewables by 2050 in power generation mix. If we move to the next slide, as I said, they continue to fall. The cost for solar PV have fallen by 82% last year, and 56% of utility scale renewable power capacity additions in 2019 achieved lower electricity cost than the cheapest new coal plant. So that's, I think, an important number to reflect on. We also looked at the socioeconomic benefits of renewables. According to our post-COVID recovery agenda for resilience, development, and equality, we think that there's a need for 1 trillion investments in renewables and enabling renewable infrastructure over the coming 3 years as part of recovery packages, which is roughly twice the level we've seen in recent years. And of course, the G20 is very active in this, has been for a couple of years now through the toolkit for renewables, the plan of action on renewables, the renewables as part of the energy transition agenda, the sustainable development agenda, and the innovation agenda. So it's very heartening to see that it's also a core part of the activities in this group. Next slide, please. So one focus area is clearly flexibility for renewable integration in the power system. Apart from technology, markets and regulations, system operation and business models require attention there, and we outline in the reports how that can be achieved. Next slide, please. So we need to increase the investments in renewables. That is another core activity. As I said, we roughly need a doubling of investments, both in generation, but also in the enabling infrastructure, including digitalization, etc. Next slide, please. So bioenergy is today the largest source of renewables. We think it will also continue to play a very important role going forward. both you see that the emphasis of applications is somewhat changing. More attention focusing on, for example, aviation, but also on bioplastics. So that's an area which is rapidly evolving, and of course there sustainability of supply is also a key area of attention. Next slide, please. So and also maybe worth to highlight that biomass in combination with CO2 capture and storage is one of the very few negative emission options that we're going to need going forward. So in conclusion, there's a very important role for G20 in terms of target setting, enabling frameworks, scaling up investments, as well as to ensure sustainability, notably for biomass supply, to foster innovation, to continue broaden the field of applications of renewables, and to ensure that there is the skills needed. And all of this is now an important opportunity also in the context of the COVID recovery plans. And IRENA is ready to support this together with its 161 member countries. Thank you very much.
Dolf, thank you very much for that presentation. I think everybody on this call agrees with you about the importance of renewables and bio energy. And interestingly, I think that that the investment issue is going to be uppermost in everybody's mind too. I want to remind everybody that negative emissions is a good thing. That's how we're trying to capture that fugitive carbon and do something with it, recycle it, reuse it, or remove it. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, has been working on the various policies that might push this initiative forward. Andrew Prague is currently a special advisor to the Environment Directorate and organization at the OECD. He has more than 15 years of policy experience across climate, energy, and environmental issues. Andrew, delighted that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Greetings from Paris, where I have to say it's been about 35 degrees the last couple of days. So it feels a bit like being in Riyadh, even though we couldn't travel there. It's my honor today to give a few findings from the OECD's contribution to the Circular Carbon Economy Guide, which focused on policy frameworks. And I just have 5 minutes, so I'll just give a snapshot of the report and some words about how it fits in the current global context. Next slide, please. Obviously, when looking at enabling policies for the circular carbon economy, we touch on some of the specific elements of policy pertaining to the so-called 4 Rs of the circular carbon economy. But we also look at the enabling policies that are common across all elements and which are necessary to bring forward the circular carbon economy. On the reduce side, this is what we see still as really the first priority for climate action and for the trajectory towards net zero emissions, despite the importance of also bringing forward the other elements of the CCE. The policies here are quite well known and have been talked about a bit already, so I won't go into them here. On the recycle side, as mentioned by Dolf, this is primarily about bioenergy. Here we really focus on the importance of the broad sustainability questions, making sure that the important increased uptick in bioenergy is not impinging on other global environmental challenges such as biodiversity loss and so on. And thirdly, on the remove and reuse side, we identify a bunch of policies relating specifically to carbon capture, utilization and storage. And we chose to focus specifically on issues around financing and the challenge of financing CCUS. These are quite well aligned with the CEM CCUS financing principles, which we talked about yesterday, so I won't go into detail of those today either. Next slide, please. Focusing instead on these common elements of policy enabling frameworks across the circular carbon economy, just pull out some of the key themes. One of them is about enhanced international collaboration. I think it can't be said enough that international cooperation is essential to making progress at all elements of the CCE. This is about, of course, engagement with ratcheting up ambition under the Paris Agreement and the contributions within that process. But it's much broader than that, as already mentioned by Dave. It's important elements of technology collaboration, of reducing trade barriers to low carbon goods and services, overseas development assistance, and so on. Secondly, the importance of setting long-term objectives within a country to make sure that the direction of travel and the overall strategy is clear for ministries and policymakers across government. This is very important, but it really needs to be matched with near-term tangible policies that actually impact the behavioral investment decisions that are happening right here and now. The 2050 target by itself is not much help if it's not also acting in the near term. And this intertemporal aspect is a very important element of CCE. We need to reduce emissions now, but we need the policies that are also bringing forward the technologies we need, particularly for the remove and reuse elements. One of the cross-cutting policies that does act in the near term is making sure that energy pricing is coherent with these long-term objectives. This is partly about carbon pricing, which we still see as a fundamental element of this equation in the different forms appropriate for different country contexts. But it's also about reforming fossil fuel subsidies, with which there are still many opportunities across a number of countries. And then it's about taking this ensemble of energy pricing reforms and making sure that the whole is really clearly and visibly people-centered and is about being progressive and not impacting negatively on the most vulnerable parts of society. This was very important before the current crisis and is even more important now. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show a snapshot of why we think the carbon pricing question is so important. This looks at what we call effective carbon rates. This is a measure we use in the OECD to look at the real cost of carbon acting in the economy. So it adds together not just carbon taxes and carbon trading, but also energy taxes, fuel duty, and converts them all into a single value of carbon price. What you see here is that most countries still have a majority of their emissions in the red area, which means that emissions are priced at less than 30 euros per ton and below the levels that we really need to see for accelerating this action. In fact, about 70% of emissions are unpriced completely. So this is why we still focus on this area. Next slide, please. Just to finish on these cross-cutting themes, another important area we have is about policy alignment across government. Here we see this really in two ways. One of them is about making sure that climate policies and climate action and the transition to net zero is really made to be visibly aligned with government's other social and well-being objectives. Of course, creating jobs is absolutely paramount in the current context, as mentioned by previous speakers, but also broader well-being objectives, people's desire for cleaner air, people's desire for more livable cities, and so on. And then the second direction of alignment is really looking at other policies across the economy and saying, well, it's all very well having strong climate action, but if there are other incentives, other types of regulation which are pushing in the opposite direction, then that is counterproductive and ineffective. One big area of these so-called misalignments is in the financial sector. And that brings me to this box at the bottom left of the screen. One of the areas we look at is what we call resetting the financial system. So overcoming these misalignments about short-termism in financing, about better valuing long-term value of sustainability and climate risk in order to bring forward the large increases in investment that we need, in particular on the CCUS front. And then last but not least, on the bottom right, the importance of governments to be having a strong innovation framework that goes really beyond just public sector funding of research and development, but about supporting the whole innovation ecosystem. Given the current company, I don't need to lecture you on that point. And next slide, please. Just to conclude with a word of how this fits in the current context, others have already mentioned the importance of seeing all these policies in the lens of the COVID-19 recovery. This is from work which we just released this week, actually, at a ministerial roundtable at the OECD on green recovery that we had on Monday. What we did here was look at all the measures that governments have already announced, the real measures they put on the table, identifies those which are positive for the low carbon transition and green recovery, and look at which sectors they apply to and what kind of measures. What we see from this kind of heat map is that it's really currently quite heavily focused on energy and ground transport, which makes sense, but also focused around tax reduction and subsidies and grants and loans and so on. There's opportunities here to spread across other sectors, which are also important for the circular carbon economy, and also to look at other types of recovery measures, in particular, more of a focus on innovation and the skills training aspect. So with that, I will close. Thank you again for the opportunity to share these thoughts. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, Andrew, thank you very much for that very thorough overview on the kinds of policies going forward that will help promote dealing with climate challenges and how the circular carbon economy fits into that context. We're going to change pace slightly now, and we will be talking about how Saudi Arabia is trying to move forward in implementing the CCE concept within its own domestic perspective. Fahd Ajlan is the director of Hydrocarbon Sustainability Program at the Ministry of Energy here in Riyadh. He's also involved in helping to design this national program in the kingdom to address CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions that could ultimately drive value creation, employment, and economic diversification for the kingdom. Very, very important. Fahd will be, I'm sure, talking about how a number of organizations and institutions, companies in the kingdom are already moving on a number of CCE type issues. And his group will be looking at KPIs and metrics associated with moving forward and finding ways to make sure that this program can be sustained and discussed on a national and even global basis. Fahd, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you for the nice introduction. I'll just try to quickly go over the national perspective on the CCE and try to give Saudi Arabia's experience. While we're, as you said, we're just trying to launch the program, and hopefully by year end we will have something ready to share. I think we had a discussion on the climate change and how the focus has shifted. So if we go to that slide, please. And I think this has been discussed thoroughly, so I don't have anything to add, just to remember what are the business as usual scenarios and the aggressive emission reduction that have been targeted under the Paris Climate Agreement. And so if we can go to, I think this applies to other resource-rich countries, is we're seeing in this framework of climate change that, at least as part of IEA projections, that with the different scenarios, we'll see a big drop in demand for hydrocarbon materials. We're sharing in this graph, you can see just oil demand as an example. And we're looking at this from the perspective of a lot of natural resources that have been endowed in Saudi Arabia, but I think other countries as well have a similar concern with this current framework. And I think that's why we believe in CCE, and CCE offers a lot of value from a national perspective. Next slide, please. Plus, in addition to this focus on national resources, I think it's important to also bring in the inefficient utilization of existing infrastructure. There are billions and trillions of dollars in existing investment that in the current, or without the CCE framework, will be mothballed and retired. And it will require a significant investment, especially in a fiscally challenged world, to actually replace them. The second, I think, challenge is the reduced energy access and reliability. I think we've seen that to reduce gas and oil and coal in the national grid. We're seeing an increase in overall energy costs despite the falling rate for renewable. And we're seeing a deterioration of energy reliability. And I think when we look at what has happened in California this summer, there are so many lessons for other countries to look at and make sure that while they continue to target renewable and make sure that energy reliability is built into their system. And the final, I think, one is the major impact on developing countries that require affordable and reliable energy access, as well as the lack of practical solutions for hard to abate sectors like aviation, shipping, industry, and so on. Can we go to the next slide? And so I think that's why, from our perspective, we believe that the CCE, the climate protection angle, with the socioeconomic impact, where we can capture value from waste CO2 released in the atmosphere, promote the new industries that are based on CCE technology that will contribute both to GDP uplift as well as employment generation. And I think for us in Saudi, concurrently with the presidency of the G20, we place a lot of emphasis on global leadership, and so we're looking to continue the dialogue, continue the discussion around CCE, and hopefully set the examples when it comes to CCE to reinforce our leadership in climate change globally. Next slide. And I think that's why we see this value of the framework of the 4 pillars, the 4 Rs. But also I think where we see the CCE looking into and cross-cutting so many of this, making a lot of progress when it comes into reducing their emissions. And so when we focus on so many initiatives, I think we can see that we're focusing on a lot on carbon capture, enhanced oil recovery, as well as the normal, I think, discussion around efficiency and standards that will bring down energy use. However, I think what we want to especially focus on, and I think bring a lot of discussion, financial part of CCE, the policy and legal framework that are there, and as well as the infrastructure and human capital that I think we need to have in place to actually move and set a groundbreaking CCE program that can be an example for other countries. Next, please. And I think this is why we believe in a bottom-up approach. We believe that a national program should involve all entities, not just the government or just the companies, but
Fahd, we've please keep going. You've been going in and out, but we're following your presentation. Go ahead, please.
Apologize about that. So the whole idea is that we bring everybody, we bring in the municipalities. In Saudi, we're also finally, I think we look at research institutes and university to play their part in developing the R&D and the ecosystem, the piloting of those promising technologies. And with that, I would like to conclude. Thank you, Adam.
That was perfect timing, Fahd. Thank you so very much for that. And I'm really just so delighted to see Saudi Arabia actually moving forward on this idea as a domestic program, with serious programs and investment associated with it. We're now going to take another slight switch in the program, and that is we'll bring in the IEF, Mission Innovation, and the Clean Energy Ministerial to discuss how multilateral collaboration can accelerate technology development and deployment in the CCE context. We'll have 3 speakers. I'll very quickly introduce all 3, and then we'll go through. Christoph van Acht is the Director for Energy Dialogue at the International Energy Forum. He has been involved in intergovernmental organizations, and he specialized in international economics, energy policy, and market regulation. Jenny Dodson is the head of the Secretariat at Mission Innovation. She has over 15 years of experience working at the intersection of science, innovation, sustainability policy, and international collaboration. And Dan Dorner is the head of the Secretariat at the Clean Energy Ministerial, bringing together countries, companies, and international experts to accelerate the clean energy transition. He previously served as a primary author of the IEA's World Energy Outlook, something that all of us here have been very impressed with for so many years. Christoph, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Adam, for the eloquent introduction and for the opportunity granted to the International Energy Forum to address how multilateral collaboration can accelerate technologies to achieve a circular carbon economy. Next slide, please. Well, we believe this can be achieved if we strengthen public-private partnership, build on best practices and industry capabilities, and facilitate knowledge sharing, but most importantly, of course, leverage existing international cooperation in a smart way, including by engaging with the Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, and the G20 agendas on the IEF platform. Next slide, please. Producers and consumers have sharpened focus on a comprehensive whole energy system approach that is needed to enable a smart, swift, and just recovery over the short term, and for the world to grow in a fair, secure, and sustainable manner this century. The problem is not the direction, but the speed and pace of change. Different world regions with different economic conditions place different emphasis on clean energy policy and technology pathways. The 4 R's that make up the CCE initiative can deliver smart and more integrated energy system solutions at the speed and scale that the world needs to meet our shared goals by the next decade. We can achieve this if multilateral collaboration breaks out of silos and innovates on its engagement. Next slide, please. Investment in the deployment of circular carbon technologies can be accelerated if cooperation between producers and consumers ensures that distinct policy and technology pathways can build on each other's strengths to step up worldwide momentum and create a more predictable environment for investment, trade, and technology transfer by reducing market hurdles. Next slide, please. Moreover, the moment to accelerate is now. The CCE can reinforce stimulus measures to overcome the COVID-19 crisis by enhancing collaboration on reaching energy access and emission reduction goals that boost a green recovery. Next slide, please. Built on existing models and voluntary partner engagement to mainstream technology solutions, the circular carbon economy platform will allow stakeholders to work together through open and competitive market approaches and strengthen the policy cohesion that is needed to attract the investment and move forward faster together. Next slide, please. The IEF offers such a platform by building on the model of the trilateral program of work with the International Energy Agency and OPEC on energy security, or the Joint Organization's Data Initiative on market transparency. The 70 member countries of the IEF are increasingly focused on forward-looking energy agendas to achieve shared goals over the next decade in accordance with the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. Therefore, the IEF looks forward to strengthening engagement with the Clean Energy and Mission Innovation Ministerials to achieve a circular carbon economy or other net zero strategies. Next slide, please. Greater data transparency on carbon management options and metrics will allow better assessments on how progress is achieved and in making data on CO2 storage and other management options for carbon more freely available and comparable indeed. This will allow stakeholders to benchmark their performance, measure progress, and lead to better informed policy and investment decisions in accordance with new government standards. Next slide, please. A smart and agile approach will strengthen cohesion among national and regional efforts, identify and exploit complementarities, create the economies of scale that we need, and step up research and development to accelerate proof of concept and shorten lead times to market deployment. Next slide, please. Placed within the appropriate context, the CCE platform reinforces and accelerates existing and new initiatives to accommodate also solutions that are still behind our horizon today. An open-minded and agile design is key, therefore. Indeed, stakeholder collaboration on the CCE platform with the Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, and other partners will benefit all. Next slide, please. To conclude, elementary functions that the CCE platform could focus on are CCE partnerships to identify champions and benchmark track records in specific areas, CCE clusters for voluntary peer reviews among stakeholders on CCE advances, CCE data to make circular carbon economy options and metrics more transparent and comparable, and CCE facilitation to enable market entry with support of international financial institutions. Thank you very much. I hope I've kept within my time, and I'll hand it back over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Christoph, and welcome to the new Secretary General there at the IEF, Joe McMonagle. Christoph, that last slide that you had, your concluding slide, was really kind of interesting. The IEF is bringing together both producers and consumers, very important for international collaboration, and the importance of data and the Jody data system that IEF has been promoting is also critical, I think, in moving forward. Jenny, I know that you had a really serious research interest in bioenergy and resource economics when you were getting going, and now you're the head of the Secretariat at Mission Innovation. Please tell us how we're going to innovate our way towards success on the circular carbon economy.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the introduction. I'm delighted to join this event, and I think it's a very timely discussion, particularly as we build up to the ministerials for mission innovation and CEM next week, and then the G20 energy ministerial, all hosted by Saudi Arabia. So I just want to share a few thoughts about mission innovation, what we've learned around multilateral collaboration to accelerate innovation, and how we can, what is needed in the future over the coming decade. So Mission Innovation is a global collaborative initiative of governments focused on accelerating the pace of clean energy innovation to achieve performance breakthroughs and cost reductions to provide widely affordable and reliable clean energy solutions. It was launched nearly 5 years ago now at COP21 in 2015, and now has 25 members who are responsible for more than 80% of global research, development and demonstration spend. And members voluntarily collaborate to deliver against Mission Innovation's 4 objectives, to enhance investments by the public sector, to enhance engagement of the private sector in clean energy innovation, to enhance multilateral collaboration, and to also share and communicate the developments in clean energy innovation globally and engage innovators in this process. So we know that innovation is a complex, uncertain, dynamic series of interconnected processes. Extremely difficult to predict the direction and exactly where we're going to be in the next decades. And new innovations typically take several decades to reach significant market shares following invention, particularly in the energy sector. To shift systems and to really get to these solutions that we're trying to aim for in all of the areas that we've discussed today for the circular carbon economy, we need to get a virtuous cycle moving of technology development and deployment that drives falling costs, which can then lead to rapid uptake of new solutions and build jobs and economic opportunities. And I think we've seen this in some areas. So solar and wind are real examples of where this has been successful, with photovoltaic module prices falling by around 80% since the end of 2009, and wind turbine prices falling significantly too. But there are challenges in getting this cycle up and running and moving faster in all of the areas that we've discussed today. And key elements that we've really identified as needed for this are expectation setting. So the uncertain nature of innovation means that expectations of future markets, technologies and policies can have a crucial influence on decisions, whether by policymakers or private sector investors. And setting long-term visions can help inform those investments and the development of future markets. But this needs to be backed by commitments, both the innovation and the investments in research and development, and also the building of market opportunities through regulation and deployment commitments. And through the combination of these, this can really stimulate and increase investments in innovation. But also essential to this is the networks that we have. So building networks between innovators, between policymakers, that enables us to transfer ideas and learnings faster. You know, for instance, having several different countries building demonstrations at the same time can enable us to stimulate learning through different companies working on similar projects and across different regions as well. And international cooperation can have an impact on all of these areas. So by countries jointly setting expectations, it sends an even bigger signal to markets about the direction of travel. Through common commitments, the level of innovation and rapidity of market niche development will be higher. And through international networks, knowledge transfer can happen faster, and we can learn what works and what doesn't work. So mission innovation is a real example of how joint commitments and increased collaboration by countries can deliver outcomes and increased impact and effort on the ground. In its first 5 years, Mission Innovation members have delivered a substantial boost to public sector investment in clean energy innovation of around $4.6 billion annually over the past 3 years. And this wouldn't have happened so quickly without countries together making those joint commitments and ministers coming together at our annual ministerials to celebrate and share their progress. And I'm looking forward to announcing the current impacts and latest developments next week at our ministerial. And Mission Innovation has also boosted collaboration, in particular the 8 innovation challenges in areas such as hydrogen, smart grids and carbon capture and storage have brought together clusters of governments to enhance collaboration in priority areas, all of these relevant to the circular carbon economy. And through regular conversations between ministers, officials and technical leads around these areas of common interest, we've shared knowledge and strengthened networks. And these different topic areas are really acting as accelerators for innovation, doing those things that I highlighted earlier, setting out the long-term targets, bringing forward and identifying commitments from governments, and accelerating learning and knowledge between policymakers and innovators. But despite the successes, we know that there are many innovation challenges that still need to be overcome. Many of the technologies that are needed for a circular carbon economy that we've discussed today are at prototype or demonstration stage, and significant effort is still needed to drive down the costs, to demonstrate them at scale, and to get them through into deployment and to the market. And this is an opportunity to seize the economic growth and broader welfare gains from clean energy transitions, particularly as we recover from COVID-19. Reliable and widely available clean energy is more critical than ever, and innovation will be absolutely critical in reducing costs and uncovering new approaches to how we produce, use, store and distribute energy. By bringing together voluntary groups of governments around areas of shared interest, through making common commitments in the same direction and working together in a spirit of cooperation, we can accelerate clean energy technology progress. And we know we need to go further, and Mission Innovation Ministers will discuss next week the future of global clean energy innovation cooperation beyond the first phase of Mission Innovation. This is an opportunity to boost the effort of the public and private sector to accelerate clean energy technologies, and I look forward to working with all governments, the private sector and innovators committed to this agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. We all know that climate change and dealing with emissions is a global problem, and the idea of innovation and global cooperation is going to be critical. And I'm sure Dan Dorner agrees with that and is going to tell us even more. So Dan, please, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, let me say that I hope that all of my friends today, everyone that's watching and joining us today, I hope that you and your loved ones are all safe and well in these extraordinary times. I should also say it's an absolute pleasure on behalf of the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat to work with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, both on its G20 presidency and on its hosting of the 11th Clean Energy Ministerial. We're really excited by the program of clean energy ministerial events, including this one today, obviously jointly with Mission Innovation, and that we have running across this week and into next week. And so are all of our clean energy communities. So thank you to everyone. Next slide, please. So as Dave said a bit earlier, we're not on track. So many of the clean energy technologies and sectors that the IEA has been tracking in its Tracking Clean Energy Progress Report, those traffic lights that we look at, unfortunately, are red and amber, and so few of them are green. So the need to accelerate clean energy transitions is absolutely clear. The data and analysis tells us that. And on our side as a Clean Energy Ministerial, our focus is very much on deployment. Deploy, deploy, deploy. And at the heart of that the Clean Energy Ministerial is very much built around its global community. It's also a ready-made platform that brings together voluntary clusters of countries, companies, and international experts to accelerate the deployment of those clean energy technologies. And together, they account for around 90% of clean power generation today and around 80% of clean energy investments today. And they're all committed to that single mission of advancing clean energy transitions. The value of our approach really is that it's a very flexible approach. It allows our community to come together to work on priorities of common interest for them, defining goals and work programs to achieve them, together, as I say, with those experts from all over the world. And that also speaks to the fact that it's an open platform that brings together those coalitions, including beyond our membership. And if I give just one recent example of that, Ghana has started participating in our electric vehicle initiative, for instance, because Ghana is very interested in looking at the electrification of transport, not just for Ghana, but for the continent of Africa as well. But all very much in the spirit of coming towards these action coalitions that I talked about. Next slide, please. And the CEM's activities, we have around 22 active work streams at the moment, but they're also continually renewing. The span of these activities in terms of CEM initiatives and campaigns, that does span the entire energy system. And also, in the context of today's meeting, it spans the entire circular carbon economy framework and spans all of the 4 Rs within that framework. And as we can see here, when we map all of our different initiatives and campaigns there, be it in power sector supply, integration, CCUS, nuclear, hydrogen, biofuels, the list goes on and on. There's a real broad range of activities, including in the enabling environment, which the OECD and Andrew talked about earlier on as well. And this can range really from kind of essential policy work to technical grunt work, all the way up to political leadership, which we're looking forward to hosting our next ministerial plenary meeting next week on the 22nd. And for the first time, everyone in the world through this platform, through YouTube, will be able to watch ministers in action and watch ministers looking to plot that high-level leadership and that high-level course that we need to do to achieve those clean energy transitions. And I can't go into the detail of all of our work streams here, but as I say, just quickly, some of the examples really to focus on around a lot in the power sector and in interconnection and integration as we move towards the kind of next stage of power sector transitions, if you like, but also all the way through to looking at efficient appliances in the home at end use and also electric vehicles, as I touched on earlier. Next slide, please. Now, this is too small for everyone to look at, so don't worry too much, but it's really just to give you a complete mapping that shows actually, firstly, when we take all of those work streams, those initiatives and campaigns, you can map them under the 4 Rs, but also when you then look at our membership, those countries all around the world, and that flexibility that I talked about, they then get to pick and choose which of those areas are most important to them and to actively participate in those work streams, setting goals, setting work programs and working together in those coalitions with the private sector and others to push forward to achieve those goals. And this chart here really just shows the wide range of participation, but the fact that all countries get to pick and choose which areas are most important for them. And as I say, the CEM work program really is in a state of continuous renewal and is very flexible for new members joining existing activities and members also initiating new work streams in line with their interests. And actually, just later today, we'll also have another event where we see the launch as a CEM campaign, a new Drive to Zero campaign focused around how we can drive down emissions in the medium and heavy duty vehicle sector, as well as also with the benefit of the Minister of Brazil, see the BioFuture platform come in formally to the CEM community and the CEM family for the first time, and we look forward to welcoming them both. Next slide, please. Yes, so really just in summing up, CEM work spans do cover the whole CCE framework, all of the 4 Rs, and are very much consistent with the goal of achieving a circular carbon economy towards net zero emissions. But across all of those R's, all of those activities, the analysis and the data clearly tells us that we need to scale up the activity that's going on worldwide, as well as renewing our activities there to help achieve the rapid acceleration that is required. And as I say, CEM is very much a ready-made platform for that in terms of the community that we have, the countries, companies and experts to help accelerate clean energy deployment consistent with that approach and in line with that framework. And just very lastly, I want to say that we're incredibly grateful to Saudi Arabia for hosting the 11th Clean Energy Ministerial this year and for holding it alongside the G20 Energy Ministerial next week. It's incredibly brave of them and incredibly considerate of them to take on all of these really important international energy meetings and moments at this critical moment. It is, as I see it, a critical opportunity to demonstrate clean energy leadership and to take actions collectively in that global community to achieve that much needed acceleration. Thank you, Adam.
Hey, Dan, thank you very much. And thanks for that shout out to Saudi Arabia and the G20, and in particular, the G20 Energy Sustainability Working Group. And it's been working so hard on all these. I'm going to take that really tiny print that you had on a couple of those slides, Dan, as a positive, actually. Think of it as a target-rich environment. There's a lot of work that can be done here that could really help move the control of greenhouse gas emissions along. We're now going to switch to the question and answer session. And we have a number of people that will be, that I'd like to ask questions. I believe we're going to bring Fareed Asaleh and Fahad Al-Ajlan back onto the platform.
Are we on the platform?
I see you now, Fareed, and I'm hoping that we get Fahad coming in as well. Fareed, maybe while we wait for Fahad, I could ask you a question, and there he comes. Fareed, could you give us just one or two ideas on how the CCE approach can be an appealing basis for international cooperation?
Thank you, Adam, for that question. I think the circular carbon economy inclusivity by itself in advancing the sustainable development, including the climate, is a very important factor that encapsulates all the options, all technologies and fuels and sources. So the 4R strategies of the CCE to utilize the technological innovation while managing emission and utilizing those emissions economically, its value that could be added as we go along. This can be applied universally, and these strategies will provide a common platform, as have been stated by a number of colleagues, that is voluntary in nature, perhaps to be used nationally and regionally. I think it also provides an international multilateral partnerships that cluster different stakeholders, private sector, public sector, and others, that they can congregate to advance these opportunities by adapting the bottom-up approach to achieve economic growth, depending on the endowments of the different stakeholders or countries in specific. Furthermore, I think the CCE is one avenue to cooperate on technology innovation, research and development, deployment, dissemination, through shared investments, and perhaps more importantly, share investments and commercialization of technology. I think these are a few things to basically share with you, and I hope that I have addressed your question.
Fareed, thank you very much. And I don't know whether you heard all of the fine compliments for the ESWG activities across the entire summer and in the run-up to the summit. Everybody was thanking you very much. Fahad, let's move over to you. Domestically, here in the kingdom, what one or two features do you see that make this CCE approach workable?
So I think there are two pillars. The first is the policy, the legal framework comes to scaling up technology. When we're talking about CCUS,
So, Fad, we lost your audio again. You said the first pillar was policy and legal framework, and the second pillar was?
Funding, especially for emerging technology, to scale them and make sure we make them commercial at a larger scale.
Right. So we're going to get the legal and policy framework in a good spot, and we'll find ways to make the investment work in this. And that's actually been a theme across almost every presentation that we've heard today. Thank you very much, Fahad. I want to move on now to Dolph and Sylvia. Sylvia Bayer has jumped in here. She is the senior policy analyst at the IEA. Dolph, could you and Sylvia say a few words on how IRENA and the IEA are working with the Clean Energy Ministerial and Mission Innovation to accelerate the transition? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. On the cooperation with the CEM, of course, we've cooperated over many years. The current activity is around long-term scenarios for energy transition. It's an activity that has been going on for a couple of years now, and that is having quite some traction with 13 of the CEM members participating and 7 technical partners, and there's a constituency of a few hundred members. We'll launch a report on global experiences and best practices in planning energy transition based on the learnings from this group in 2 days. There's a dedicated CEM side event to that, and please join there. On the MI, we are working together with Mission Innovation to better track the impact of the 20 billion per year innovation support. So not only look at how much money is spent, but actually what do you achieve with this money, and what is now the most efficient use of this money. So I think that is very interesting results that are coming out from that, and we're looking forward to strengthen that cooperation further.
Thanks very much, Dolph. You know, the investment thing is really big. Here in the Kingdom, NEOM will be spending $5 billion to drive a green hydrogen ammonia project. So the need to make sure that that investment will be available is going to be critical to this whole project. Sylvia, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam, and good morning to everyone. It's been a real pleasure to watch this event, and also congratulations to CEM and MI for bringing us together. It was great to see the guide on the circular carbon economy presented by CAPSAC and all the partners. It was a great year to work together, and thanks to the Saudi presidency for that. I shall say a few words about how the IEA collaborates with CEM and with MI, and I think I couldn't be better preceded by Dan and Jenny, who have already set out all the many activities that are ongoing. I just want to start by saying that international collaboration on technology is actually something that can be taken for granted. It's a real challenge for companies, for policymakers, to really get the best out of international collaboration, to discover synergies, to make it happen, really look at across technologies, the investment side, as Irina said. So, you know, Dave has shown already some of the highlights that I would call the enabling framework from the IEA that we offer with our technology pathways, with the tracking report on technology, economic recovery pathways. So that is just one of those frameworks. So as you may know, since 2018, the IEA hosts the CEM Secretariat as a special activity. So on a daily basis, we're working with our friends from the CEM Secretariat, Dan in particular, and all his great colleagues. And there is a lot of synergies because the IEA is a coordinator of a number of the CEM initiatives. In fact, many abbreviations I shall mention here, but just to say on energy efficiency, equipment, SEED, we are coordinating the electric vehicles initiative, which is really the flagship on global cities collaboration, business collaboration on EVs, the power system flexibility campaign, but also the hydrogen initiative and the investment and finance initiative. And as you said rightly, Dan, this week, Biofutures platform will be joining that part of the basket where the IEA is coordinating, and we're very proud about these activities. The technology collaboration that we are also engaging in is not only about technologies, but also about gender in the energy sector with the C3E, that is now also a CEM initiative. So there is a lot of things. And equally on mission innovation, based on our collaboration that was actually established in Sweden in 2015, the IEA is supporting all of the MI members in their national energy innovation efforts in 3 areas. It's about, first, data collection and analysis, second, policy analysis, and third, how to make the most of international partnerships. So here to say what we have been doing with MI, Jenny already noted a lot of this in her presentation. We are tracking the global spending on energy R&D, but we're not only looking at what is the investment that is made in public and private spending, but we have been behind the actual decision that was taken at the MI in 2015, this call for doubling the spending in clean energy R&D in the first MI term. So I think this we will maybe not see again, this pledge, looking at the joint community that is expected to be released at the upcoming MI Ministerial. Second, you've seen the Energy Technology Perspectives was launched this week, the IEA's guidebook to the global energy technologies, offering a lot about policies, pathways, and we have released the Clean Energy Innovation Report in July that also helps countries to identify where they are in their own efforts on innovation and how and which priorities they should choose under MI. This fits very well with the IEA's opening the doors to the partner countries. In particular, our Clean Energy Transitions Program has been fundamental and instrumental in reaching out and being partners with China, India, and Brazil. Those are the 3 countries with which the IEA has a clean energy innovation cooperation. We are advising them on their innovation framework. And at the basis of all of this, there used to be something that the IEA called as boring as the implementing agreements. And to be frank, this is a fantastic network, a global network of technology experts. Whenever you go somewhere, you will almost find anybody from the Technology Collaborations Program ready to work with you, companies, governments. It's a very easy to do first kind of technology collaboration that was literally at the basis of much technology. So I just want to finish here and say thanks again, and collaborating means developing synergies, and I believe we should be really thankful and offer our congratulations to the leadership of Saudi Arabia to enable that this year for the G20 to creating the strong links.
Okay, great. We're going to finish off now with Dan and Jenny. We need 1 sentence, maybe even half of a sentence. What's the one thing? What would you like governments to do with the Clean Energy Ministerial and Mission Innovation? What's one thing that you would love a government to come in and ask you to help with? Dan, let's take you first.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. For me, it's look, let's double down. Let's go big. Let's be active, very active. You know, the clean energy transition is a global endeavor, but with regional and local flavors. And we've heard just a couple of examples mentioned in the last few minutes. You know, our partnerships with IRENA and the IEA on the one hand in terms of expert organizations, but also the NEOM clean hydrogen project that you mentioned in Saudi Arabia. Countries around the world are looking to advance their plans on hydrogen. They will be fascinated to know what Saudi Arabia is doing in that project. They will want to hear about it, learn from it, take it forward and integrate it into their own activities too. both of these things really speak very highly to the benefits of collaboration through the CEM.
Fareed and Fahad will help you make that dream come true. Jenny, we're going to give you the next to last word.
Thank you very much. And I think it just refers back to what I said. I think it's setting long-term targets, backing it with commitments, and really recognizing the value of networks and relationships to learn from each other and use that domestically to make the best use of investments. And I think the thing that we really need to do is recognize the value of not just doing this in isolation alone. It's recognizing that cooperating and doing this together is it's a positive sum game. There is additional benefit from doing it together, and there are huge opportunities in the transitions that are coming forward over the next decades. And again, I'd just like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all the work that Fareed and his teams have been doing over the past months for the G20 Energy Ministerial and the Mission Innovation and Clean Energy Ministerials. The value of networks and relationships cannot be underemphasized, I think, in this. It's intangible benefits that they are so important for accelerating learning, sharing knowledge, and really maximizing the investments and work that all of the innovators, researchers.
All right, Jenny, thank you very much. So that's a big shukran to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. On behalf of the Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, the G20 Energy Sustainability Working Group, I'd like to thank everybody here today for your participation in this ministerial pre-event. It's ahead of the G20 Summit, which is, of course, hosted by Saudi Arabia's G20 presidency. Multilateral cooperation, which is on our agenda today, and developing technologies associated with managing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions is critical, absolutely critical to finding practical solutions to our urgent climate challenges. This session was recorded, and as I mentioned earlier, questions submitted will be answered by the sponsors. And I hear that the broadcast on YouTube was going very well too. I'd like to say best wishes to everybody. Stay safe and stay focused, and goodbye. Thanks again.